With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
We're all familiar with finishing bourbon in wine barrels, but finishing in a rosé cask? Now we're venturing into uncharted territory. For Penelope Bourbon, that uncharted territory lies in the southern Rhone region of France. Their rosé cask finish marries Penelope's straight bourbon whiskey with French Grenache rosé wine cask. The result is a unique aromatic blend of strawberry, floral, and herbal flavors. Take a sip of this one-of-a-kind bourbon at penelopebourbon.com. Are you ready to turn your passion for spirits into a thriving business? Welcome to Regard Law Group, your trusted partner in Central Kentucky. Whether you're looking to set up a distillery, create a liquor brand, or open a bar or restaurant, we've got your back. From licensing to permits, we navigate the legal landscape so you can focus on what you do best. Plus, we handle corporate matters, business litigation, and even help you raise funds from investors. Don't go it alone. Call Regard Law Group today and let's make your vision a reality. Visit regardlawgroup.com for more information.
Limestone Farms bourbons are like a secret portal to a world of rich flavors where high proof meets smooth satisfaction. Every barrel is meticulously crafted and blended with a specific message in mind. Experience clean delineated flavor profiles that will have you engaged from the first sip to the final drop, making your palate beg for just one more taste. Limestone Farms, bringing heritage home.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend and co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Mark, I am great out here. How are you doing? You doing well in the command center there?
Mission control, everything's a go at this point, man. So,
Nice. Got the ship in ship shape. And
yeah, man, in Bristol fashion. But, we jump back in on the Squadcast, and I still just get confused sometimes because we have live guests in the studio, and then coming back to Squadcast, I'm just like, now which buttons and where's everything at? And you think after 4.5 years I'd have this down pat, Matt, but here we are still, man. It's the thing, it's old age, you forget things, Matt.
There's a reason that we don't even let me touch the buttons.
Well, you got something else to look forward to too. 20 more years, you'll be here. So
God willing.
Yeah, there you go, man. Well, we're going to have a great time tonight. I'm really looking forward to this show for sure. Of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support. We appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. We couldn't bring this show to you guys every week with our great guests without the support of all of our sponsors. So thank you to them. Matt, with that said, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
I would love to. This for us is quite a throwback in terms of episodes here. This might be I will go and say this is our longest between repeat guest. It was episode 10. We were in the thick of it all with the pandemic.
Yeah,
we were not on YouTube at the time, and I remember recording this one sitting on the floor of my bedroom.
That's
with
right.
my laptop just on an end table because needed someplace to record. But anyway, I digress here. We've got joining us again. He was the star of episode 10. Now we've got him back here on episode 241.
241, I believe. Yeah.
241. How about it? Creator of Nose Your Bourbon, live in Atlanta. Still in Atlanta, I think.
That's correct.
That's correct. All right. Chris Walters. Chris, welcome on back to the show.
Hey guys, thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, Chris, we're happy to have you back, man. You're one of the original 10 OGs, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's crazy. I feel honored to come back on, and clearly it's shown. It's been too long, so we'll have to not make it such a big gap next time.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's our fault, man. We won't let that happen again. It won't be 2028 before we get you back on, man. So we'll remedy that. But yeah, we're excited, man, to talk to you, talk about everything, man, because you have been going gangbusters. You were talking about us off camera before we started, and everything is kind of going on for us. But goodness gracious, man, we got a lot of stuff to unpack with you tonight and things to talk about. So that's going to be a lot of fun to catch up and hear about all the awesome things you've got going on. But before we jump into that conversation, let's talk about some things. Chris said I'd message him and ask him, hey, let's pick some things. What do you got? And he kind of ran down a list of things you've recently picked up. And fortunately, I was able to find that I had them as well, some of them.
Perfect.
So the first item, this is the first one we got poured up. This is the Woodford Reserve Toasted. This one came out earlier this year. I believe it was in May, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure off of that, but retail on this one was $64.99 at the distillery. And I remember driving out to Woodford because it's only about 20 minutes away from here in Lexington. Drove out and picked up 2 bottles of this. This is actually, let's see, the mash bill. I'm looking at my notes, 72, 18, 10, which is their standard mash bill. The thing about this one, it's kind of funny because what happened was apparently they took their distillate, which is, put in these normal barrels that they use. And I can't remember what all they use. And what happened was they had barrels that were delivered that they used for their double oaked. And those barrels are, what is it, Matt? Lightly charred, heavily toasted. I can't remember which one Woodford used.
It. Yeah, I think it's like 1 char heavy toast.
Yeah, so apparently they ended up putting new distillate in those barrels by mistake. So it was a barreling accident. And they got like 20 barrels deep, and somebody was like, "Oh crap, we got the wrong barrels." So rather than dump them, they decided just to leave it.
So so this person just hides them up in the rick house, retires, and 8 years later, they're
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Hey, guess what I did?
I got out of here before you found this. Yeah.
Right. So that's the story. Anyway, that's what the story is on this expression that came out this year. So it's the double oak barrels that they usually use for that double oaking process, but this is an actual first fill with the regular Woodford distillate that's aged for at least 6 years. And that's usually their age range on their Woodford is 6 to 8 years, something like that. So this are apparently like 6 years plus. So that's the story. Sticking to that one, Matt. What do you pick up on the nose on this, man?
Well, I guess I'll start it off here, even though we've got the expert on the show.
Well, that's true, man.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I've heard otherwise, but I'll grab the bull by the horns on this one. To me, calling this like a Woodford toasted, or like somehow relaying that this might at all be related to like double oak or double oak even, is a complete departure from the two. This, to me, it noses like it has kind of that green young oak nose to it, where you don't get all the complexity, all the roundness from like the char in the barrel. I think there's something to be said about some of those sweeter and like more robust, fruity charred notes that come out when you actually put some flame into that barrel and go char 2, char 3, char 4 even.
Yeah.
Just getting more of that depth. To me, it has just like this nice kind of like green oak. There's almost like a little bit of mint or like some herbal notes on it as well. But just like kind of a light, almost young nose, I would say.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? What do you think, man?
Totally agree. It's funny, when I was fortunate enough to be in Kentucky when this dropped, and picked up 2 bottles myself. And the girl that was working the front counter, she was like, "Yeah, I think people are saying this one's younger." And I was like, "Oh, that's usually not a good thing. I don't know if you should say that, But I totally pick up on that. I get that youthful note. It's like that new distillate. That totally makes sense. Beyond that, you get some of that cream corn. There's definitely some sweetness there. But yeah, almost that you mentioned green on the side of oak, but almost a green apple note, which I know is something that Woodford does claim to be present in their regular bourbon. So I think it totally plays.
Yeah, it's just it just noses really young to me, And I remember Matt, because I think we've done this one on a podcast episode before, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I hate to admit it, but I don't think I was a big fan of it on the nose, at least. Just because it was like, Matt, like you said, because you think Woodford, you think double oaked, et cetera, and you hear toasted, and I think it conjures up these images of, oh, it's going to be this sweet vanilla, marshmallowy, campfire-ish, dessert type of bourbon. And then you put this one to your nose and you're like, huh. But there's no chart. But the weird thing is, man, I mean, the color on this though, I mean, it's not like a double oaked or anything, but it is a still pretty dark color on there, to just be in a heavily toasted, lightly charred barrel, at least, my perspective. But yeah, that nose, man, it's got a really young nose, very young oak, aroma to it. So, well, Chris, man, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on here. So just as a refresher, since it's been 4 years, why don't we talk a little bit, if you would, just kind of share your story, talk a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, your background, and then not necessarily how you started the brand, but just how you got into the bourbon world.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chris Walters. I live in Marietta, Georgia, which is just outside of downtown Atlanta.
Wait, I thought it was Mayretta.
I mean, it depends on which side, but so my kind of journey into bourbon was I was really searching for something that I could just go to the liquor store, pick up, pour into a glass, and enjoy. I had already kind of been into beer. And I was like, there's the cocktail world, but I'm not sure that I want to go into that. I don't want to have 27 fresh ingredients on hand at any given time to make this massive, thing. And so what's something I can just go and grab off the shelf and it's going to be great in the glass. So I did not know the difference between bourbon and Irish whiskey and Scotch whiskey. So I went to my local Total Wine and kind of explained to the best I could what I was looking for. I believe they pulled an Irish whiskey for me, and I really kind of struggled to enjoy it and find like, oh yeah, this is what I was looking for. It took me a long time to finish that bottle, and I was like, man, if this is what whiskey is all about, I'm not sure that I'm in, right? And so I kind of pushed it to a side for a while, and it was a couple of years later actually until I saw a Bullet bourbon bottle on the shelf, and something about the packaging just really grabbed me, and I was like, this looks like a cool old frontier bottle, and like, I need to know more about this. So I picked it up and didn't really know any of the story behind it or anything, and probably drinking Four Roses juice at that time. But the flavor profile, I was just like, this is so different. And I didn't have the vocabulary for it at the time, but this is those brown sugar notes, that caramel. It's a little sweet. It's a little bit spicy. This is exactly what I was looking for. And so that, like most hobbies for me, I launched into, I need to go buy everything that I can in this price range and compare it. And then let's up the price a little bit. So the rest is history.
And that was it. So then you weren't like you haven't always been like a bourbon drinker. This is something that kind of came on, like how long ago were we talking? Like,
so bourbon, I got into bourbon in 2015.
Okay.
Before that I had been into beer. I almost went the wine route, meaning I was starting my research process of like, oh, what are the best bottles of wine under $20, and starting to taste through them. Really what it was for me, I think I easily could have gone that route, was the fact that once a bottle of wine is opened, it deteriorates so quickly and has to be consumed in a couple, 2 or 3 days before it's flat and no longer at its peak. And with bourbon, it's like, I have bottles on my shelf that are 3, 4, 5 years old. And as long as the fill level is decent, they are completely fine, still very, very good to drink. So that was kind of my thing. It's like, wow, this stuff is really shelf stable. So,
yeah. And that's true, because I agree. I mean, I'm not a big wine drinker, but once you pop that cork, it's like you don't have to do it in a few days, or it's just no good anymore. Right. But yeah, like you said, man, you can buy these bottles, and just as long as you have a decent amount in them. I've had bottles that have turned. We experienced that on an episode not too long ago, didn't we, Matt? With a lot B I had, I think it was.
Oh no.
Yeah. Had a little bit left in it. It was awful.
Oh, that's sad.
Terrible. So I'm curious, Chris, so you got into bourbon, but now that's 9 years ago. I mean, so that's really before, I think, in my mind, before, because I didn't really start getting into it. I mean, I drank bourbon for a while, but wasn't really into it probably till 2018. So you were still kind of ahead of the curve there. So you started getting into it. So how was it that you kind of took this hobby, or this, what was becoming, more of an interest? I mean, what was it that made you take that step from that to actually turn it thinking, oh, this is something I could pursue and turn into a potential business?
For sure. So honestly, it was as new bourbons were coming out and I was reading tasting notes that these writers were describing in great detail of all these charred oak and dark cherry and earth and tobacco. And I'm just like, okay, these guys are either completely full of it or their palate is somehow insanely better than mine. And I need to figure out which is which. So it set me off to do some research and go online. Is there like a sommelier level designation? There sort of is with the bourbon steward certification. And that's actually something that I'm working on too. But I really didn't find, I was like, how do people train their palate to pick up these notes? Is that something I can do? So I came across the concept of bourbon nosing kits. Most of the ones I found on the market were quite expensive, $150 plus. And they use the little vials of, clear liquid that's either essential oils or like a perfume based aroma that's supposed to smell like this natural ingredient. And I was like, oh, that's kind of lame. And it's expensive and I'm kind of broke right now. So maybe I can make my own with stuff around the spice cabinet. I started asking some friends that had better palates than me, like, what did you do? He's like, honestly, I just spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I bake a lot, so I kind of, as I'm pulling different things, clove and nutmeg, I'll smell them, or just being around them, you start to get that scent memory. Right. So, that was kind of the first, I created the kit for me. I was like, I need this as a training tool. I need to be able to sit down and figure out, can I spend time with these different spices and different things? And will that actually make a difference? Will it allow me to be able to pick up more notes when I'm tasting and nosing? And what do you know? It did. So that was kind of, that was probably late 2017, early 2018, when I kind of came upon that. I started posting my experience and my little version of the DIY kit on bourbon Facebook groups, and it started to gain some interest, So I was like, hey, maybe there's something here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great because it was something that you're passionate about, you enjoyed doing, but you wanted to know more about it. And it's so cool that, just out of your passion and your desire to learn more and to understand more and just to, I think, have an overall better experience, to be able to find those descriptors, kind of led you on that path. And Matt, I'm always jealous of Matt just because he does such a great job, having worked in the restaurant industry, but also having worked at a bakery. You were talking about that, having access to different spices and just that memory. And I'm always just amazed when Matt tastes something and then instantly he can vocalize what it is. Whereas for me, it's still like, wait, what is that? It's sweet, but what kind of sweet is it? Is it this kind of sweet? Is it that kind of sweet?
Yeah.
And Matt's just over there.
Well, that's when things like Chris, like your kit, come in really handy to help guide people because everybody knows, like we were saying, it's sweet. Okay, well, sweet can be fine. You can say, yeah, it's sweet.
Yeah.
But what if there's more? What if you're curious? Like, what else is there? What could that sweet be? And so you have to explore and go down is it like a natural sweet? Is it fruit sweet? Is it, confection, fake sugar sweetness?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there are all these different ways that you can really go down and pinpoint something. And I think that's fun to me, to taste something and then say, all right, it's bitter. Okay, what kind of bitter? Is it a natural bitter? Is this like a, some sort of a confectionery bitter? Is it like, and playing with it that way, I think it really helps the experience to go 100%. That much further, to enjoy more what's in your glass if you get the chance to really think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great point, Matt. And like Chris said, a lot of it too is the repetition. It is the experience of taking the time to set and to spend time with it. We had Paul Packelt on, and what did he say, Matt? He sits down with 4 or 5 pours and we'll spend 30 minutes at a pour, just working through those, to get used to just to pick out the notes and lets them set, comes back to them and takes his time with it. A lot of people, when you're drinking, you're not going to sit there for 30 minutes to an hour and let your whiskey sit in a glass that long to see what you're picking up. But it is something I think that most people have the ability to learn. And then, like you said, it goes back to the memory, the experiences and things that you have, the things that you've nosed, the things you've smelled in the past, what you're familiar with, like Matt working in those industries and having the the memory of those spices and the different things that he worked with, that he can just instantly pull those out when he tastes a bourbon or a whiskey. I mean, it's a unique skill to have, but I think it's one that a lot of people can learn, right? So.
100%. And it's like when you watch a sports athlete do something incredible, you're like, man, how did they just this overnight sensation? How did they get to this level? It's like, no, there's 10,000 hours, there's 100,000 hours behind that got them to that level of experience. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the iceberg, right? You just see the tip above the water and all this stuff underneath, right? So Chris, I'm just curious, was there like a defining moment? Was there something at one point where you finally just said, you know what, man, this is it. And I'm just going to do this. I'm going to pursue it. Was there anything like something that tipped the scale to make you finally just say, yep, I'm in, I'm just going to move forward?
There was. It's funny, as I was posting in bourbon groups on Facebook, it wasn't a commercial post at all. It was just like, hey, here's this cool thing that I've kind of stumbled upon that's really helped me. And the interest came from that, as folks were messaging me or commenting and saying, is this something you're thinking of selling? And up until that point, like I hadn't, I had no packaging, I had no brand, I had no label, I had no logo, anything. It was just like, it was an idea, and it was my little kit. And I used the worst possible containers for my first DIY. They were like the little lip gloss containers, so you almost couldn't open them. They're like impossible to turn. And I was like, I cannot sell this, but if there's enough interest, like I will find a way to package this and sell it, because there's clearly a need for it. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool. And that's awesome that the community was supportive and obviously was, encouraging, obviously, to get you to move that next step, which is great, man. I mean, the bourbon community is just wonderful, but that's really cool that was really kind of the impetus that pushed you forward to make that decision. So guys, let's jump back as Matt takes a drink of the whiskey. Let's jump back and talk about the palate and the finish on this Woodford Reserve toasted bourbon. Matt, since you just had a swig there, man, what'd you pick up?
To me, it didn't come across with enough barrel influence. I think it tastes a lot of raw distillate.
Yep.
There's like a spicy component to it right up front that doesn't tie in, I think, to the rest of the flavor. It's disconnected. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but oftentimes on the front of the palate, when you get something that's got a nice spice, it leads into the rest of the palate, and that spice will then be rounded out by some barrel notes or some more of the distillate or some char, sweet fruits or something that would come from the barrel. But on this one, it doesn't really come after that. There's that spice, and then it almost has like a raw barley, kind of like light beer type flavor to it. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but there's some sweetness, there's some like good honey, some nice like straw flavor as well in there. Kind of some playful like peppercorn or like herbs on the finish. But to me, I think these barrels are probably best used for secondary finishing.
Yeah,
from Woodford.
I would agree, Matt, because you get that spice like you said right up front, and I think you're thinking as a toasted bourbon again in your mind. You're waiting for that kind of sweetness wherever it comes from, whatever it presents as brown sugar, marshmallow, whatever. Mm-hmm. You're hoping and waiting, for that spiciness to be offset with that sweetness, so you get that play of flavors together, spicy and sweet. And man, it just never really happens. Yes, there is a hint of sweetness to it, like you said, Matt, honey. But man, it's just, and to me, it almost finishes dry and bitter. I'm just, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, my mouth is just feels like it's getting drier and drier, but there was just this real bitterness at the end of it. Right after I took a drink, and I don't remember that the first time that we had this, but it just almost has a bitterness to me. So Chris, what do you think?
Well, Mark, you're right. I'm not going to go after Matt and you anymore on the tasting notes. I mean, you guys are just nailing everything. But no, it's funny. Like the tip of the tongue spice, that's where it first kind of presents for me as well. And I love when it transitions to the back palate and just really grabs onto you and just takes your palate for a ride. And it never gets there for me. Yep. That classic, like everything you're describing, that kind of graham cracker, marshmallow s'more thing. That's what I love about a toasted bourbon. That's why it was like a no question buy for me. But this it's that I think the youthfulness is hurting it here. And if anything, if I can like wrap together all of the flavors that I'm getting and put together like the nicest thing I can say, it's like some stewed apples with a little bit of cinnamon on it. So like you've got that green apple and a little bit of cinnamon on there, but I agree it's finishing dry for me also.
Yeah. I'll never forget I bought 2 bottles because you can buy 2 bottles. That's the max.
Yep.
And she rung it up and it was like 140 or 150. And I'm like,
what?
Wait, I was like, I've only got 2 bottles. She said, yeah, it's $64.99 because the pricing on these little 375s had always been like at $55, something like that.
Yeah.
So they bumped the price like $10 a bottle. So it's $20. I'm like, really? So then I got home and cracked it and I was like, oh. So yeah, I mean, I have to admit, and I'm a big fan of Woodford and I love the stuff that they do. But this one's probably a miss for me. It doesn't hit the right notes. I think from expectations, calling it a toasted bourbon, I don't think it hits the mark for me. So, all right.
Yeah. It's a fun experiment to see what a toasted bourbon can be. But I think this one maybe as a blending component into something could be better utilized that way.
So basically that guy on the barreling line 6 years after the fact, if he's still there, now he's fired.
Yeah. Hopefully he's long retired and enjoying his time off.
Yeah. He didn't have to face the wrath of the aftermath of the distribution of the, no, just kidding. It's not that bad, but it's just not what I expected. Right. So
is that
you both bought it?
Yeah, we did 2 bottles, both. Yeah. They got us, but
yeah, it's about $300 between us, man.
That's the same story behind Wild Turkey Forgiven, isn't it? That somehow it's supposed to be a bourbon distillate and someone dumped the rye mash into it, and there's some type of
mess up,
an accident that became maybe a marketing story. I don't know.
Yeah. I wouldn't call this one a happy accident though. So, but all right, guys, well, we're at the end of round 1 here. So why don't we take a quick break? We'll get a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more with Chris Walters, the creator of Nose Your Bourbon, in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3 Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.3chordbourbon.com.
Welcome to Old Dominick Distillery, a family-owned craft distillery nestled in the heart of downtown Memphis. Founded by descendants of Domenico Canali, a pioneering Sicilian immigrant who made Memphis his home in the late 1800s, Old Dominick is steeped in history and tradition. Old Dominick prides itself on offering a diverse selection of whiskeys to satisfy every taste. Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or a curious newcomer, you'll find something to love, including an 85 proof Tennessee whiskey, bonded Tennessee whiskey, a single barrel Tennessee whiskey, a 90.1 proof bourbon, and coming this fall, a cask strength bourbon. Each bottle of Old Dominick whiskey is crafted with care, featuring unique mash bills that offer a variety of high and low proofs. This dedication to quality ensures there's a perfect pour for every whiskey enthusiast. Old Dominick whiskeys are proudly distributed in several states, including Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Georgia, Arkansas, Illinois, and Mississippi. Can't find us locally? No problem. You can conveniently purchase our products online and have them delivered straight to your doorstep. Ready to explore the world of Old Dominick? Visit our website at olddominick.com to learn more about our history, discover our products, and find a retailer near you. All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it is my good friend and my co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Mark, I'm doing great out here. At the rate we are going with our Kentucky weather here, it won't be long until this fireplace is roaring.
I almost turned it on for you, man, because it was a cool day here this morning, at least.
Yeah.
And the basement down here, it's like Maker's Mark cellar aged. Their cellar, man, it's like feels like it maintains around 50, 55 degrees down here or something. Doesn't matter what the temperature is.
There are some nice summer nights. I'm glad to be down in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as your basement. But there are a couple days in the winter when I feel like you need to chisel me out of the chair.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Anyway, man, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and all the wonderful bourbon they have there available as well to keep us all warm on those cold winter nights. But we appreciate all of our sponsors as well, everything they do for us. We could not bring you the show every week and all of our wonderful guests that we have, like Chris tonight, without all their support. And with that said, Matt, well, I kind of ruined it, but you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Hey, that's not a problem, Marcus. It's always your call if you want to introduce the guest, but I'll take it from here. We've got the man who knows your bourbon better than you do, the creator of Knows Your Bourbon, Chris Walters. Chris, welcome on back for the second round.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I see what you did there, Matt. That was cute.
Hey, what are you
gonna? Yeah. Chris, welcome back, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be on. It's been too long. I'm glad to be with y'all.
April of 2020, almost 4.5 years, man. Guest number 10. I mean, wow. You deserve a plaque or something.
Oh yeah, I'd love that. Put it on my wall.
We're gonna have to come up with something for him. The longest gap between appearances on the Bourbon Life Podcast.
I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's good.
Well, yeah, that's our fault, Chris. We're sorry about that. Like I said, we won't let that happen again, man, because you've got a lot of stuff going on. We're going to get into that in this round, but let's talk about what we're drinking first, real quick. This round, another bottle that Chris suggested he had, and I had as well. This is the Old Forester 1924. This one I found out today. Well, this is a 10-year-old. It's a bottled in bond. Is it bottled in bond? It's 100 proof, but I don't know if I don't think it is bottled in bond. I don't see it on there. No, I do not, but it is 100 proof. It's a 10-year-old. It's a different mash bill for Old Forester. This is actually 79% corn, 11% rye, 10% malted barley, which is not their standard mash bill. This is I think, is it Evan? They make Evan Williams, right? Is that right?
Evan Williams is made by Evan Hill.
Evan Hill, crap. I'm drawing a blank, man. What's the product that they make? I'll have to come back with it on Brown Foreman. Come on, Matt, somebody help me.
Jack Daniels.
Anyway, it's a mash bill that they make, but it's not a standard Old Forester mash bill. Anyway, and let's see, is there anything else on? No, 100 proof, 10 years, $115 for the bottle. Picked this up earlier. This one came out this year as well. So pick this one up at Liquor Barn, I believe is where I got this one. So Chris, I'll throw it to you since Matt didn't like me throwing it to him first. Do you want to go first and tell us what you get on the nose?
How are you going to have like the master on the show here and throw it to me?
Oh,
Chris,
come on.
Please.
I don't know about that. But
Maestro, if you will.
I'm just glad to be going before you for once. So I get a lot of red fruits on this, and if I had to pick one, you're kind of getting into that plum range on the nose. So I love finding fruit on bourbon. I love red fruits. I think this one definitely fits that bill for me. This one is noticeably sweeter, as we kind of compare it in the flight. So you're getting some of that, almost like a molasses or a honey sweetness on there. Not a ton of spice, maybe just a hint of like a black pepper spice, but not a ton of spice on the nose.
Yeah. Matt, what about you, man? Now you get to follow Chris.
Yeah, I got to echo the red fruit notes. That plum is definitely there. It almost tastes or smells, to me like stewed red fruits, like kind of releasing like stewed berries or something, like a sweetness in it. Then there is definitely some influence from the barrel on this one, I think. And it like to stark difference from where we started on the first round.
Yes.
Where we were longing for those familiar barrel notes. To me, this one brings across a sweet brown sugar, those like dark, charred, laden notes, almost a little smoky on the back end of the nose. I don't know if I'm just smelling that, but there's almost like I get like a little hickory or something kind of on the, like it's just a light waft of some smokier notes on it as well. But like good nose, good, kind of complex, but really round, lovely bourbon nose.
Yeah. It's funny, Matt, because following up the Woodford, and these are both Brown Foreman products. I just realized that, but following that up, because we had this one on the show before as well. And if I remember correctly, I was not a big fan of this one. which kind of surprised me now because nosing it, I don't remember it nosing this nicely. Because those red fruits are coming out. I get that that dark sugar kind of aroma as well. And a little bit, and that oak you talked about. And I guess, I don't know, maybe it's because it's following that toasted. It's just like, it's like such a departure from what we had in the first round, that I'm picking up all those bourbon notes. So maybe that's what it is that's making me think, wow, this is a lot different, but it's different than what I remember it being the first time that we had it. So I don't know if it's changed since it's had some time to set and get a little air in the bottle with it. But I feel like it's definitely opened up more, and it has a better nose on it. So I'm curious what the palate. I haven't tasted it yet, but we'll get to that.
It's funny how,
I
was going to say, it's funny how scent memory works too, because when first time I tried this, I was actually at the Old Forester, taking the tour there, and we got to taste it on the tour. And I was like, oh, I hope there's going to be a bottle in the gift shop. Well, after this was the last thing we tasted, in the lineup. And then they had one of those little, I don't know if it's like a chocolate covered marshmallow graham cracker candy thing that they sell in the gift shop. And so now I'm immediately like, my mouth is salivating. I'm like wanting that specific thing, this chocolate covered marshmallow graham cracker thing that was delicious. So yeah, nice. It's tightly tied together.
Yeah. Very, very nice. So Chris, excuse me, let's talk about this creation of the brand. And I do have this is the kit you sent me 4.5 years ago.
Yep.
There it is. Very cool. Very fun. Can you talk about how it was that you talked about it a little bit earlier, going through spices and things like that, talking to friends and getting the nose. So what was it? How did you come out and figure out what you're going to put in this?
Yeah.
And then, can you talk about the actual sourcing and how you got everything together to do? Because this is you've got, let's see, how many are in this? 18 different little compartments in here. So, that's a lot of work and a lot of things to come up with. Just kind of talk about that process, if you would.
Yeah, really what unlocked it for me was coming across the concept of a bourbon tasting wheel. Gotcha. And so if you haven't seen one of those, you can Google bourbon tasting wheel, but most of them start with 5 major categories in the middle. So you've got wood, you've got grain, sweet, spice, and fruit. And then it kind of goes out one level and the spokes get a little bit more, specific. Instead of just wood, now we're looking at, is it oak? Is it nut? Is it, if it's grain, is it a sweet or a spicy grain? If it's sweet, is it like a baked sweetness or a candy sweetness? So, and then it goes out one more level, and that's where you get the specific tasting notes. And I basically took that list that I found and I was like, I bet I could find 18 ingredients that are shelf stable, because I didn't want anyone to have to like refrigerate the kit or anything weird like that. But something that's basically a dried spice already that fits the bill for these. And what do you know? I found 18 of them. And that was kind of my guiding principle. So if you notice the kit, when you open it up, you'll see that the ingredients are color coded. And so those colors pertain to the 5 categories. So blue is going to be your sweet, red is spicy, yellow grain, green is fruit, and then tan is your wood and oak notes. So that was kind of it. Like, can I find 18 things that have a good, strong smell that don't need to be, stored in any particular way? Basically, you can store it anywhere you store your bourbon. All the rules, like not in direct sunlight, not in the trunk of your car, like none of these things. But yeah, that was kind of how I came on that.
And that's cool. And then you have them all in these little individual compartments. And it's funny, Chris, because this is 4.5 years old, and I'm sitting here opening this back up like cherry. This still smells like cherries.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest concerns when I created it. Honestly, is how long is this thing going to last? Because as I saw competitive products in the market, if you're using chemicals or essential oils, those are probably going to last a very, very long time. I honestly didn't know when I started, what is the shelf life of this thing going to be? It was one of the number one questions I got when people would order it or think about ordering, and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this for Christmas. Is this too soon to be buying it? And so that's been my experience too. I have a personal kit that I filled that's probably a little bit older than yours, and I keep going back to it. I'm like, is this thing still strong 3, 4, 5 years later? And most of them, absolutely, you can still pick them up. The good news is if some of the ingredients start to fade, many of them you might be able to replace from your spice cabinet or a trip to the grocery store.
Right.
Some of them you might have to get a little bit more creative. You might have to go to like a homebrew supply store, like that somewhere you buy the supplies to make beer. If you're going to get rye or wheat or cracked corn or something like that.
I'm telling you, this is wild, man. Because I've had this kit forever, and I took it out on TV with me back in June for Father's Day kind of gifts.
I
But
appreciate
I've not
that.
actually, I have not opened these up, man. And that's crazy how the majority of these still have very vibrant, especially the clove, which I hate clove.
Yeah. See, I was playing the long game with you guys. That's why I didn't reach out for 4 years. I wanted to, this was like all part of my big plan.
We're the research and development here.
Man, that was smart. So you just go out and you buy this up. I mean, obviously you're buying in bulk, right? I mean, you've got to buy huge components to do this, right? And you have like your own facility now, or is this something, I mean, you don't do it out of your house, or do you?
I do. I still do it out of the house. Yeah.
Wow.
Most of the production happens in my basement. There are a couple of projects that will come around once a year, twice a year, something like that require more than I'm willing to store and produce out of my basement. And so I have actually found a partner in New York that's helped me source and produce that. And that's when you're talking, the last order was 9,000 kits. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to need some help with that.
Wow.
We did the first one. It was 4,500 out of my basement. And my wife was like, why are 50-pound bags of corn showing up to the house? I'm like, it's going to be fine. We're going to sell it. It's going to be great. So it was
like the FBI is going to show up at your house or something to be like, sir, why did you order these huge bags or whatever?
It's just a matter of time. But
now, Chris, remind me, do you have children? Do you have kids?
We do. We have 3 kids, 3 girls.
Okay. Yep. Did you post something like you had your daughters, like it looked like they were like helping, working, packing stuff up?
I did. It's funny as we're getting older. So our oldest is 13, and they're like, hey, how can we make some money? Like they're not quite old enough to go get like a real job.
Right.
And so they're interested, like, hey, can I fill some kits? Can I do some work around them? I'm like, absolutely. So even our youngest, she's sitting there tearing bubble wrap, and our middle daughter's forming boxes, making them and everything. So definitely around the holiday time is it's a highly giftable product, obviously. So holiday orders always go kind of crazy, but yeah, it's a family affair for sure.
Very cool. So one question I'm always like, talking to distilleries and things when we have them on the show, what for you, I mean, what was like a significant challenge? What was something that maybe you didn't anticipate as you started this journey and you get into it and you're like, oh man, I didn't even think about that. Is there anything that's kind of popped up that's kind of been a setback for you?
Yeah. Explaining what the kit is and how it helps is a challenge, because a lot of the people that are buying it are not the recipient of it. It's bought for a gift. And so I'm trying to educate someone that is the spouse of the intended recipient that this is a cool thing and it helps you, and here's how. So that's one kind of challenge. The other thing is I did run into, this was probably 2 or 3 years ago, I ran into someone that had completely ripped off the idea down to the logo and the likeness of the kit, the layout of the label. There was no originality. There was no improvement to the idea. And they just, even down to the product photography that I had taken, like I'd used a bottles of Blanton back here and laid it down for one of my shots. They did that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like come up with one original idea and maybe we can like talk about this. But man, I was so angry. I was like, I don't even know what my recourse is here, but I'm going to figure it out because not cool. Right. And so contacted my lawyer, and we wrote a cease and desist letter, and they did not respond kindly to it. I'll say that. And before you knew it, a couple months later, their website was completely down, and I didn't see them again. So I was like, hey, I think it worked. So
yay for attorneys, man.
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
So Chris, let's talk a little bit about the kit itself. And you talked about, the components and putting that together. So somebody that gets the kit, can you kind of walk through how somebody would use that in terms of doing the nosing and learning how to actually do a nosing on their own?
Absolutely. There's kind of 2 main paths that I like to talk about. One is, and you mentioned kids. This is actually a great activity that can have nothing to do with bourbon at all. That's just a fun family
hey, kids,
activity.
Here's a bourbon. Smell it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I've done that before, maybe. But you can just, take turns blindfolding each other and taking the cap off of one of the canisters and just giving them a quick smell and be like, what was that? And they're like, clove? You're like, no. You're like, nutmeg? Nope. It's so fun. So we do that sometimes. And while that's a fun little game, that's also a great way to train your nose on a specific scent, to have that scent recall, to be like, okay, if I say brown sugar right now, you guys both have an idea in your mind of what brown sugar smells like. But I bet if you open up that canister of brown sugar and smell it, it's going to be slightly different than whatever that scent memory was that you have, because when's the last time you opened up the bag of brown sugar and stuck your nose in it? It's probably been a while. So that's a great way to just kind of train your nose on each one of these scents. Yeah. That's my favorite Friday night activity.
Upstairs.
Yeah. Right.
Matt got in my pantry earlier before we started the show, Chris, and just buried his face in a bag.
Okay. Everybody but Matt, no, but so that's one way, is kind of just working through each ingredient that way and kind of blinding yourself on what is this thing that I'm smelling. The other way is to start with the bourbon first. And especially as your palate starts to improve, if I take a bourbon to my nose and I smell it, I'm going to start with those 5 major categories on the bourbon tasting wheel. Don't get complicated. Don't get crazy. Is it sweet? Is it spicy? Is it fruity? Something like that. It's a really broad brush category. And even those may be a challenge at first. So like, don't be discouraged if that's you. If you're like, man, I can't even detect spicy. That's okay. Spend more time with it. I promise you will. But if you can get to that level of it's definitely fruity, but I have no idea what fruit it is. Actually, I don't know that you guys even have this kit, but I launched an expansion kit after the original, which is 18 additional aromas. And you'll see the green is really lit up. I really wanted to focus on more fruit and more wood and nut notes. So in here, you've got things like plum, which we just identified. You've got apricot, you've got orange and lemon zest. And so if you're getting that citrus note and you're like, gosh, is that lemon or is that orange? That might be one that's kind of hard to distinguish without cracking open the orange and lemon. So that's the other way, is kind of start with the bourbon and then let that lead you to a major category. Use the kit to get more detailed.
That makes sense. Yeah. If I had $1 for every time Matt said apricot, I'd be rich. Oh, wait.
Well, I say apricot often.
Good stuff.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's a common note, which is something that most people out there would probably not. I mean, even I can't say, the last time I ate an apricot, I mean, I couldn't tell you that I have. I mean, I don't even remember if I did.
Yeah.
Well, I won't segue too far here, but I think in terms of bourbon and rye, apricot, I feel like I find quite commonly it's a great, it's a great middle ground to me between sweet fruit and stone fruit. Think of sweet fruits like your berries, strawberries, like the really sweet apples, or like stone fruits like your red wine fruits, kind of like your cherries, dark grapes, plum, fig. Like when you kind of find that middle ground, I oftentimes associate that with apricot if it's got kind of some zesty citrus as well, kind of notes on it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So Chris, I want to ask you about this too, because, some people get intimidated, right? When you start asking them, hey, what do you smell? What do you nose? What do you taste? Get intimidated. So, I mean, is this something like, could a beginner use this? Is this a kit designed that a beginner could use, but then also could someone who's a little more advanced in their journey on bourbon use this as well?
Yeah, I like to think of the kit as designed with that brand new person to bourbon in mind. It's simple, it's approachable, but yet it's comprehensive enough that the advanced bourbon enthusiast can absolutely level up their palate with it. Also, you're gonna get different things out of it based on your experience level. So it might be for the brand new person getting from even finding one of those first 5 categories for the first time. And for the more advanced person, it might be like that distinguishing, is that plum, is that cherry? Like, it might sound kind of nerdy, like, why does that actually matter? But for you, of kind of logging down your own tasting notes and noting that, like, oh, I found this bourbon that has a cherry note. I've been able to identify that. Here's a friend that has tasted something else and I trust their palate. They say they also find cherry. Now I'm more likely to go buy that bourbon without being upset that I spent $70 on it or something like that.
Right. No, I mean, that makes perfect sense, because you don't want to end up with something that tastes like a new oak barrel and grain forward and spend $70 on it. Right.
I don't know what that would be, but yeah.
I'm just throwing that as a hypothetical, Chris. Yeah. So let's jump back. Speaking of whiskey, let's jump back to this Old Forester 1924. Matt, this time I'm going to throw, as he takes a drink of water, since Chris went first, I'm going to throw it to you, man. What do you get in terms of the palate and finish on this one?
I think the palate on this starts out where we were talking with the Woodford. You get that spice and then it just kind of left a lot to be desired. This one, the 1924, really, I think it opens with that spice, that cinnamon, that heat that we all love, and then brings it in to more of those barrel notes, the chars, kind of the sweetness comes across, picking up sort of that like sweet apple note, kind of like cherries, almost like sweet fruit syrup, or like stewed fruit syrup on it as well. Then the heat comes back again. There's a warmth from the rye, rounds out the finish. Some of the rye spice, kind of get like the grain of rye. Think of that like rye bread, or almost like a pumpernickel rye kind of finish with like some sweet molasses, a little bit of tart action before a long warm finish. So this is good product right here.
Yeah. And again, Matt, I'm just surprised because the first time I tasted this with the whole group, I wasn't a fan of this, but man, this is, I don't know, something's different about it. Maybe it's just me, but I really enjoy this one. Like you said, you get that spiciness up front, and then you get that sweetness that I was missing on that toasted. It was like, it never went forward after that spiciness. There was nothing to come back and, counterbalance that spice. But this Old Forester 1924 has that spiciness, comes back with that sweetness on the palate as well. That spiciness lingers, but they play back and forth, and it's really nice because it kind of goes back from spice to sweet. That cherry, you talk about syrup, like a fruit syrup. I mean, to me, it reminds me like getting a little spoonful of a Luxardo cherry when you had that juice in a jar. So it has that hint of cherry, but it's really nice and sweet. Kind of has that same type of taste to me. But yeah, really, really nice, man. So this has changed my whole perspective on this bottle, because I was not a fan after the first time we drank this. And this is really good. So Chris, what about you? What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this one. I think, totally to echo what you guys said. For me, it starts tip of the tongue spice, but it quickly rolls backwards, almost like a wave on my palate.
Yep.
And it's a full palate experience, which is what I love. And then I won't spoil the finish here in a minute, but yeah, those fruit notes are definitely present, like that flavored syrup, putting it on the pancakes type thing. Totally getting that. There is that nice spice swell. It's kind of playful back and forth. And then the finish is just like, oh my gosh, is it ever going to end? Which is my favorite thing. I know it's hard to pick like one of like something doesn't have a strong palate. Do you really want it to have a long finish? But this one kind of hits all three for me. So I'm a huge fan.
Yep, I agree. I'm glad you suggested this one, man, because I was disappointed in $115. I mean, again,
yeah.
You spend a lot of money on a bottle, and you're like, oh, I'm not a fan of this. And I remember that Chad, especially, I think during our recording episode, was so upset with me that I wasn't a fan of this. But yeah, man, this is really good. So, well, guys, we're already at the end of round 2 here. So let's just take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors. We'll come back with more with Chris Walters, the creator of Nose Your Bourbon, in just a minute. Visit the historic James E. Pepper Distillery, located in the vibrant Distillery District in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Initially built in 1880 by Colonel James E. Pepper, one of the founding fathers of the bourbon industry, it operated until 1967, when it was shut down and abandoned for over 50 years. After a decade of historical research, the brand was relaunched and the distillery was rebuilt. Distilling resumed on-site in 2017, using the same historic bourbon recipe as when it closed in 1967. The distillery offers a selection of fine whiskeys for tasting and retail purchases, including the award-winning Decanter Bourbon. Intimate guided tours include time in the museum, an up-close look at the grain-to-glass process, and a complimentary tasting. Stop by for an old-fashioned cocktail and see why TripAdvisor ranks the Pepper Distillery as the 3rd best distillery in Kentucky and the #1 attraction in Lexington. Learn more at jamesepepper.com.
Hey there, I'm Carrie Van Winkle, founder of Pappy & Company, where we celebrate family heritage and Southern craftsmanship. Check out our curated collection of artisanal goods that embody the spirit of Kentucky. From our signature barrel-aged pepper sauce aged in Pappy Van Winkle bourbon barrels to our luxurious leather goods inspired by generations of tradition, each item reflects our commitment to quality and legacy. Our line of gourmet food items are thoughtfully selected to bring the taste of the South to your table. Indulge in what I can say is the best bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup on the planet. A perfect blend of buttery rich flavors that elevate any dish or cocktail. We're big fans of the Bourbon Life Podcast, and we're honored to share the legacy of our great-grandfather Pappy Van Winkle with all of you. So visit pappyco.com for 15% off your purchase with code BourbonLife15.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, he is still here. He's my good friend. He is my bourbon drinking. Well, this is not bourbon tonight, but this round. He is my co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great out here. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. Come on, you know that.
I appreciate that because the show would suck. It was just Mark, the Mark Bourbon Life show. This is not good.
Well, you always get great guests. So.
Well, that's true. I mean, the guests can carry the weight for, most of the time they can, but then, the nosing and tasting and the insight is just not there, man. Matt comes up with these wonderful
We've been relying
insights.
Heavily on our guests for 241 episodes now. So it's, at this point, it's in the recipe.
Whatever, Matt, man. At the end of some of our episodes, man, he just comes up with these beautiful soliloquies almost, to round out the guest and to thank them. And it's just like, I'm like speechless. I'm like, I can't follow that up. I can't say anything better than what Matt just said. And just like, okay, guys, that's it. End of the show. We're done. Anyway, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and the support of all of our sponsors. We could not bring you this show every week without their support. With that said, Matt, you want to tell everybody, and our guest stuck around too, man. This is great. You want to tell everybody who our guest is tonight?
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to just throw a quick little 30 second plug here. Liquor Barn, if you are around in Lexington, Kentucky on October 12th, is doing a Barktoberfest to benefit Paws for the Cause, which is a local Lexington animal rescue shelter. So they will be doing an event. There's going to be a silent auction. I'm sure there'll be plenty of pets available for adoption if you're interested. So if you're around Lexington on October 12th, 2024, the Hamburg location. I know Mark's going to be there just because Mark's always there. But come check that out. So anyway, joining us back for the third and final round, we have the creator of Nose Your Bourbon, Chris Walters. Chris, welcome on back.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for not leaving.
I mean, where am I going to go? I'm just hanging out.
The guest of episode 10, he is back. We're having some great pours tonight too, man. I'm glad you suggested these because, the first one maybe wasn't so good, but the second one changed my opinion, and I'm happy to have done it. This one, I've not tasted it either. This is from Bardstown Bourbon Company. This is part of their collaborative series. This is the Amrut that they did. So I looked at this today. I had no idea what all this involved, but it's 2 different rye distilled in Indiana, 3 different bourbons distilled in Kentucky. The rye are blended, and they are finished in Amrut single malt casks. And then that blend of the rye is taken and blended in with the 3 bourbons that have been blended. So it is a 5 whiskey, so 2 rye, 3 bourbons, multiple mash bills. I think they range in age. Seems like I think the youngest rye was 8 years old. I think the oldest bourbon was 14, if I remember correctly. This actually comes in at a total proof point. I think it was at 115. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or 110. I got to look at my notes.
110 on the notes.
It is 110. Yeah. 110 proof. I had not cracked this sample bottle. Bardstown Bourbon sent this to us. They were kind enough to do that. Appreciate that. I've had Amrut single malt. Matt and I did that on an episode before. Mm-hmm. We did the cask strength of the Amrut single malt, but I've never tried this collaborative series from Bardstown Bourbon Company. Matt, actually, no, Chris.
Yeah, go to Chris. I haven't even started.
Matt hasn't even noticed it. He's too busy pitching the Barktoberfest. So, Chris, what did you pick up on the nose, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely tell that this is a rye in this flight of bourbons here. So you get definitely more of that rye spice, kind of that brightness. This is, I feel like in times in the past when I've nosed this and gone down, it's been more kind of like I could detect more. It's feeling a little bit one note to me tonight. So I'm not sure if it's something off on my end, but I'm getting kind of that rye spice, that kind of bright, maybe a bright citrus note, almost a lemon zest. And then that's kind of it for me on the nose.
Gotcha. And I should have said I think the rye component on this is 63%, something like that. Okay. And then the bourbon component was like 37%. So it's almost almost 2/3 of the blend. Total blend is actually the rye whiskey. So yeah, that makes sense, Chris. You're picking up more rye notes on that.
Yeah.
Matt, what about you? What do you pick up?
It's and this is the first time I've ever smelled this as well. Chris, I got to echo this does bring more of a rye component, I think, to the nose right up front. It's got a creaminess too, as well, kind of like thick custard type or like a vanilla taffy type creamy note on it. But I get a lot of savory notes coming with this. Like, to me, this has like a lot of the savory flavors that I would pick up in, like, it sounds weird, but like a barbecue sauce. Like there's kind of this smoky flavor, almost like this tomato jam or tomato paste, like dark red wine, kind of to like tomatoey type note, almost like a little bit of like a fermented zing from like a Worcestershire or something. Like there's just like there's some bright. Chris, you had said that there might be like some citrus or something. You found brightness in there. To me, I think the brightness is like acidic, like vinegar acidity is kind of what I pick up on it. But like kind of like the same kind of citrus or sour notes, just different ends of the spectrum there, going from like citrus to vinegar. But there's a lot going on here. I like this.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and I mentioned earlier that sometimes it's difficult for me to vocalize what I pick up because I get spiciness, but it's like, what kind of spiciness do I get? And I can't articulate what that is.
There's a kit,
and
for
there's
that.
a sweetness as well.
Yeah,
and it's like, I'm not like, what kind of sweetness is that? Like I always say brown sugar, but it's like, this is not brown sugar. I don't know. They're just, it's a unique combination.
But I wonder if there's like a tool to help us figure that out.
That'd be
What's
awesome.
That? I know we've got
like
somebody here that can help me
tool.
walk through that, right?
Yeah,
that'd be great, right? So Chris, I mean, let's talk about how people can use the kit. Talking about me not being able to pick out these notes, how can they use the kit to kind of enhance the experience that they have when they are, nosing and tasting bourbon?
Yeah, I think for me, so much of my daily life is fast food, fast internet, fast transitions between meetings, whatever that may be. And bourbon is slow, or I think it should be enjoyed slowly. And so my hope with this kit is that it's a tool that just helps you slow down and enjoy bourbon for what it is. This is something that a lot of craft and time and attention, a lot of time in the barrel, specific thought into barreling and bottling proofs and things were made. And so, I hope it's just a way to help you kind of slow down.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. And, it takes a lot of time to make a bourbon. You might as well take a little bit of time, maybe not like Paul Packelton, and spend 30 minutes per pour, but I mean, it makes sense. You want to slow down and get to enjoy it and get a better understanding of what it is that you're drinking. So, I mean, I think that's important. So Chris, let's talk about in terms of developing your ability to nose. I mean, why do you think that's important, for a bourbon drinker to be able to develop that ability to do that?
Yeah. So sensory scientists have proven that over 80% of what we taste comes from our sense of smell. And if you've ever had a cold and you couldn't taste your steak, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the most frustrating thing on the planet. And one of the first things to go for me, if I ever have a little bit of a cold or like I'm not, my palate's not 100% there, like bourbon can taste like awful when you don't have all of your senses about you. So don't recommend that. But yeah, it's just that concept of how tightly tied our sense of smell and taste are. And it's a full experience, right? So like you walk into the bakery and what's the first thing? It's not the taste, right? It's the smell that you can smell that fresh bread, maybe French bread, fresh bread baking. And it just lures you in and your mouth starts to water and you kind of set the table for what I'm about to, enjoy. So.
Yeah. It's funny you talking about the taste, the smell being such a large percentage of how you taste. And people are like, oh, it can't be that big. And I'm like, you know what? Do me a favor, pinch your nose and then take a taste of your bourbon and then tell me what you taste. It's just like alcohol. I mean, a burn. I mean, there's nothing there, right? So you got to have that ability to nose. And I think, going back to that, the aspect of the sociability of it, when you're with people and they're like, hey, what do you taste? And I think sometimes people can feel pressured by that, or not so secure in giving their responses. But I think developing that ability to have the nose, to be able to pick out those notes and to be able to say, and like Matt always says, if you say it with confidence, people are going to believe you, right?
Yeah.
But if you're confident about it and if you train yourself, you will have the ability to do it. And, it allows you to create, this situation where you're with other bourbon drinkers and you can have an intelligent conversation a little bit beyond just, oh, I like the way it tastes.
Yeah. The other thing that I tell people too is there's no wrong answers in this stuff.
Sure.
Whatever note you taste is what you taste, or what you smell is what you smell. And don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong for that, because your experiences with different scents and aromas and flavors is completely different than somebody else's. And, I've even gone down to where, like, it's not a flavor note specifically. It's an experience that this is bringing me back to. This is the county fair. This is
Sure.
my grandparents' basement, like whatever those things are, those kind of situational things. Like, how do you taste a dark basement? You're like, you don't. It's you had to be there. But it's one of those things where you just, it's kind of your entire life experiences up to this point might influence what you taste or how you describe something.
No, I think that's great. Like Matt's grandma's peanut butter pie, man, that Heaven Hill 6-year-old bottled in bond. That's, every time he noses it, that's what it takes him back to.
Yeah.
And that, right, Matt?
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree, man. It's so a large part of, like you said, what your past experiences have been, what you're familiar with, the things that you may have, chewing on a baseball glove when you're a kid standing in the outfield, bored to death. I can taste that on whiskey sometimes, and it sounds weird to say that, but it reminds me of being a little kid playing baseball, because I get that leather note, and it's like, that's what it takes me back to. So
yeah,
I think that's a really unique thing about bourbon, is that it can really transport you back to those moments in time where you are taken to those places, grandparents' basement. Which is, sounds weird to say it, but it's true. So Chris, let me ask you this. When, because different people have different ways of tasting and enjoying their bourbon. I mean, do you have a set process? Is there something that you go through when you sit down with a new bourbon? I mean, do you have a standard procedure that you kind of follow? And can you talk about that and what you do?
For sure. I do, and I think everybody's drinking out of one tonight, but the Glencairn is my preferred glass. I've tried a lot of different glasses, and some of them have different benefits and things. For me, I keep coming back to the Glencairn. I think anything really with that tulip shaped glass is going to help you be able to move the bourbon a little bit to get some air going and concentrate the scent into your nose as you stick your nose in the glass. That's going to be especially important for lower proof, anything under maybe 100 proof, where the scents might be a little bit more faint. So I like to, pour the bourbon and let it sit for a few minutes in the glass. I feel like that's especially important as the proof goes up. If it's something that's barrel proof, it might need more time in the glass to just get some of those alcohol vapors to burn off. So I'm not going to go grab a hazmat, bourbon, pour it in here and go right for it, because that might be the last thing I taste for 10 minutes. So let it air out, give it a little swirl in the glass. And what I like to do is, especially if I don't know, if someone is blinding me and I don't know what this is, I'm not going to throw my nose right in there, because again, if it's high proof, you can actually shut down your olfactory senses, and your nose will be numb effectively for the next several minutes, where you just won't be able to smell anything. So I don't recommend that, but maybe just start a little bit lower. And if you can't pick up anything, you can go a little bit deeper. And I'm going, okay, now this is feeling like it's about 100, 110 proof. I feel pretty safe, like getting my nose in there. You'll find that if you part your lips slightly when you inhale through your nose, which is a little difficult to do if you don't think about it, it'll allow more of the alcohol vapors to pass through the entire system, and you won't get just a sharp burn on your nose. So that's one tip I like to use. Also, you might find that one nostril is stronger than the other. So you'll see me often rotating the glass from side to side. So that just could be something that, I'm picking up more sweet notes over here and kind of spice over here. Using a bourbon tasting wheel is always a great reference. All of my kits ship with one, so it's a handy little resource. And as far as, really getting in there for the tasting, so we've kind of done our nosing. We've kind of picked a major category and maybe used something like a tasting wheel or a nosing kit to get more specific. It's time to taste. So I like to take a small taste, and I do what's referred to as the Kentucky chew. You may have heard of this before. I didn't make it up, but you'll chew it around on your palate. And what that does is it allows your palate time for everything, the different parts of your tongue that taste sweet and salty and bitter, to pick up all of those flavors before you just swallow it on down. So I'll take a small sip. Just do a little chew. You're not swishing like you would mouthwash to aerate it. That's going to cause problems for you. But if you just chew it around a little bit and swallow, you'll find that the flavors were much bigger than if you had just taken that sip and gone straight down. If this is your first taste of any alcohol today, don't try to dissect it into 27 tasting notes. It's not going to happen. Your body is going into a bit of a shock. Like, what is this? I've been drinking water or tea or soda all day, and now all of a sudden I have alcohol. So like, whoa, red alarm. So kind of throw away that first pour. Don't try to spend too much time on it. Just get your body acclimated to it. And when you come back to that second pour, I find that you're much more able to like sit with it, dissect it a little bit, and try to get in there. The last tip I'll kind of leave you with on this one is using water to unlock flavor. I recommend room temperature water. Some people say, well, like, what about ice? Doesn't that do the same thing? For me, even when my bourbon gets cold, like if I take the dogs out late at night and I've got a glass of bourbon in my hand and the bourbon drops in temperature, I find that it really closes it down, and it's much harder to pick up the different aromas and flavors on there. And it's just like, I'm not really getting anything as far as flavor notes out of this anymore. So I prefer it room temperature. Same thing if I'm going to add water to my bourbon, is I'll go for room temperature water. It can be with a straw. You can just do a couple of drops. You can use a pipette if you have one and add a couple in there. Add a little bit of water to that, and there's some type of chemical reaction. I can't explain the entire thing that happens, but it does allow the bourbon and the aromas to open up, and you'll find that you're able to pick up more flavors than you could before.
Yeah, solid tips, man, for sure. You know, it's funny because I've had somebody tell me, because I was nosing side to side, and somebody said, it all goes to the same place. It doesn't make a difference which side you nose out of. I'm like, but it really does. And I don't know if it's psychological, but to me, it makes a difference. Like one side can be stronger and can pick up different notes than the other side. I believe that happens. And Matt, who was it that told us? Was it Marty
we have
Duffy?
actually had I think you were going to bring up something else, but back to your side to side thing.
Yeah,
we have had conflicting opinions on this from people within the same company.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you're right. I know. Yes,
that have said
it.
One saying it matters, one saying it doesn't matter. But I think maybe we'll leave those names out of this.
Yeah,
but I think what you might be referencing with Marty Duffy was starting at the bottom of the glass and working your way toward the top of it as well.
Because vapors, the aromas will separate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So not just getting kind of that side to side from nostril to nostril, but also go north to south or south to north, and pick up from the bottom of the glass, the rim opening to the top of it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Which, Chris, that's something I had never heard, but it came from Marty Duffy, who's the North American brand ambassador for Glencairn. So I figure if the Glencairn guy tells you,
I think there's something to that one.
Yeah, there may be something to that one. Yeah. So I try to do that, and I forget because it's just it seems like such a
it's like a minor change. But I imagine something like is it the neat taster glass that they use for a lot of the spirits competitions? It looks like a little spittoon almost. It's like a little bulb and then it flares out. That one, you've got a little bit more real estate to move around. So I could see that one making more of a difference. But
with the Glencairn, there's only
not much,
right? So it's like my nose is too big to go from top to bottom. It doesn't make that big of a difference. So it's kind of crazy. So Chris, let's actually talk about the products, not necessarily where people can find them yet, but what do you have available out there that people can buy?
Yeah, so I have two main kits. The original kit is where I would definitely recommend anyone that doesn't have any of the kits start. This is the 18 most common aromas and scents that you might pick up in bourbon. If you already have that kit and you're looking to take things a little bit further, there is the expansion kit, which is 18 additional aromas. They're a little bit more nuanced, a little bit less common, but there's some really fun ones in there too. Like I've got coconut, I've got herbal tea, I've got white chocolate, butterscotch. I also expanded kind of the wood and the nut notes. So you've got not only peanut from the original, but you've got almond, pine, walnut, and hazelnut in there. Graham cracker, which is one of my favorite ones to find on toasted bourbons, which we may or may not have found tonight, is in there as well. So those are kind of the two main kits. The original kit retails for $69 as of as of the recording of this podcast. The expansion kit is $79. And I also have bundles that include things like if you want to get some branded Nose Your Bourbon Glencairns. I have a leather whiskey tasting journal that has lined pages with like specific, what was the distillery, what's the brand, the proof, so you can just fill those out really quickly and keep your notes. And it also comes with a blind tasting sheet. So if you're looking to like sit down and evaluate 3 to 6 different pours, it's got its own little ranking system that you can pretty easily just identify, like, what did I think about the nose? What did I think about the palate? What did I think about the finish? And kind of come up with a score.
Wow, that's really cool, man. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
So guys, let's jump back over to the whiskey. Oh, wait, speaking of pricing, I forgot to say this little bottle wasn't $160, but I think the retail on this Amrut bottle was $160. So
yeah,
I just wanted to throw that out there. So let's jump back to the whiskey. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and finish on this one?
Palate and finish on this one, I get a surprising amount of, I believe, the Amrut, the malt influence.
Yep. Yes.
Up front, there's kind of like this cereal barley note, kind of certainly not a like corn cereal, not the sweetness like Frosted Flakes. We sometimes will catch off something, but like a sweet bran or just like barley cereal kind of note, with also some dark fruits in there. There's like some cherry, there's some fig. I get like kind of Fig Newton-esque notes. Rye bread, it's got like all those like kind of rye bread baking spices, kind of that cracked rye itself. Then it moves to, I pick up honey, I pick up chocolate, some of the sweet, more decadent notes come in there, and then a nice long warm rye finish. I think the rye really dominates on the front and the end of this one, with more of those bourbon notes in the middle, kind of those like cherries, honeys, chocolates come in the middle, whereas like the barley and rye bread come up front, and those rye spices, kind of those mints, herbal notes, like a touch of clove cinnamon, kind of round it out. This is really good. I really, really like it.
Chris, what about you, man? What do you think?
Yeah, this is insanely complex, and I think the Fig Newton note for me really, really, resonates with me. I think there is definitely that chocolate, that honey sweetness. I'm almost like, I don't know if it's because I've seen like their marketing image of this bottle and like the fruit and stuff around it, but like that's what if I close my eyes, like that's what I see is like this bouquet of like fruit and chocolate and honey and all these different things melding together. I think it's got incredible balance. I've never had the actual Amrut malt whiskey on its own, so I don't have that as a reference point. But this has definitely got me interested in the category for sure. If this is kind of borrowed from that, or if this is similar to that, I'm definitely interested in trying it.
Yeah. Matt, I agree. The thing kind of struck me initially was just that single malt. That really stands out. I think I was surprised, knowing that there's rye and bourbon in this, and they're just in a single malt cask. I didn't anticipate there was going to be that much influence, but I really think it comes through on the front end. And I mean, I'm not a big single malt guy, but I like this with the combination of the flavors from that rye that you talk about, the spiciness that comes through, the sweetness from the bourbons, that blend of those flavors combined with that cereal grain, like you talked about, Matt, that single malt type of flavor. It's a lot going on, but I really do like the way all these flavors kind of play together. So really cool. Mm-hmm. Very well done. Not that Bardstown Bourbon needs me to tell them they did a good job, right?
But they did a great job.
They did a great job. So Chris, let's talk about, we're almost at the end of the show here, but let's talk about the future. I mean, what do you got going on? Anything coming up that you can share with our listeners? Anything you want to throw out there so, people are waiting on the edge of their seats?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things. So one of the things I've recently launched, I'm really excited about, is virtual nosing and tastings. So if you're looking for a fun activity to do for guys' night or ladies' night, and you're wanting someone to kind of help walk you through it, regardless of your experience level, I can recommend some bourbons or ryes that we pull together. And the nosing kit is totally optional. It is a nice tool that helps supplement the whole experience. But if you're a bourbon group or a bourbon association that's looking for ways to provide value back to your members, or just looking for a great gift idea, this is something that I've started pushing on my website. So if you're interested, if you have any any type of group together, feel free to reach out to me for group pricing. I'll be happy to work with you to put something together there. The other thing that I'm really leaning into and hoping to launch soon is the concept of refills for the kits. So it sounds like, Mark, you may not actually need one even after 4 years, which may shoot this entire business model down. But there,
no, there's a few that have turned. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. So there's some that are going to be a little bit, they may have even started a little bit more faint. And that's one of the questions I get is like, I'm having trouble smelling something like cracked corn. Well, if you just think about corn as if you were to take dried corn and smell that versus something like clove, very different worlds as far as the strength of the aroma coming off of there. So there is kind of a little tip that I have as a part of my getting started guide. There's a QR code in every one of the inserts. Highly encourage you to check that out. But it's, if you're having trouble with something like corn, what you can do is take the lid off and exhale through your nose into the kit, and then inhale. And what that'll do is it'll move a little bit of air. It'll warm the ingredient slightly, and then it'll allow you to inhale and get more of that aroma off of there. Obviously, be careful doing that with some of the more finely ground things like cinnamon, or you might have a bad night. So,
don't be huffing cinnamon, man. You don't want to do that.
Exactly. So, yeah, those are two things that I'm working on.
Very, very cool, man. So I always like to ask our guests, Chris, what has been on this journey you've been on? What's been your favorite part so far?
I think all the people that I've kind of met along the way, whether that's, folks like you on the podcast, and you've been so gracious to host me tonight, or folks at the distilleries, and just other people that are passionate about bourbon, whether that's a local bourbon group or friends coming over to share pours. Everybody has been, there's not a lot of hobbies or interests and things you can get into where people are as giving and kind as they are in bourbon. Sure, there's going to be some banter and things that goes on. That's with anything. But overall, someone might fight you to be the first one in line to get that bottle, but then they're the same person that's going to crack it open and share it with you once they get it. And I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, very cool. So, where can people get more information, and where can they actually buy the kits, Chris?
Yeah. So you can head over to my website, which is just knowsyourbourbon.com, and actually have a special promo code for the Bourbon Life podcast listeners. It's awesome. TBL for the Bourbon Life 10 for 10% off. So it's TBL 10 for 10% off any order through the end of October.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing that, Chris. We
Absolutely.
Really appreciate that. I'm sure our listeners out there will appreciate that as well. Any final thoughts, man, before we wrap it up and get out of here tonight?
I don't think so. This has been super fun. It's been a while since I've tasted through a flight like this, and I really, really enjoyed hanging with you guys tonight and chatting more about it.
Well, yeah, we appreciate that. Matt, any final thoughts, man?
Chris, can't wait to get together in person, do it again, and hope you're doing well down in Atlanta. We appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and our guests this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is they're getting their Bourbon Life fix on. But always great to see you and catch back up, man. Let's do it again and make sure it's not 4 years.
That's right. Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, thanks so much, man. We appreciate you hanging out with us tonight and walking us through your kit. Very cool. I think it's a great idea, man. When you were on the show 4 years ago, I just thought, man, this is so cool. And I'm just happy to see that it's really been successful. How many kits have you sold now?
So between all of the different channels that I'm on, whether it's Bespoke Post, Vintage Gentleman, Seal Box, different places through my website, I've just peaked over the 30,000 kits sold mark. So it's been incredible, like better than I ever could have imagined. So I've been blown away by the response. All of you guys out there, thank you so much for the support.
Well, that's awesome, man. And congratulations on the success.
Thank
Promise
you.
It will not be 4 years.
Yes,
I'm saying it
that's
right
right.
now.
Let's do
Adamantly banging the desk as I say it. It will not be 4 years before we have you back on the show.
That's right.
For sure. And hey, man, if you're up in Kentucky, man, let us know.
Will do. Definitely will.
Have some pours or something, man. Have a good time. We just won't have the Woodford toasted, okay? So
yeah, we'll skip that one. We'll swap something else out in there.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks so much. All right, and with that, I'm going to wrap it up. So thank you guys for checking us out. Like Matt says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is, you get your Bourbon Life fix. We appreciate you joining us and checking us out. We know you got a lot of other podcasts out there. So thank you guys for checking us out and hanging out with us. We really appreciate that. We also want to thank all of our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Liquor Barn, all the other ones out there that do so much for us every week. so we can bring you this awesome show with our awesome guests. We really appreciate that. Thank you to all of our sponsors for that. If you want to reach out to us, you can do that. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. And you can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We'd love to have you join us in there. We got some great conversations going on. Have a lot of fun in there. So check that out as well. Also, don't forget our good friend Mike, Big Chief, doing the Whiskey Trip podcast that comes out every Tuesday under our umbrella. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram as well. He's doing some great shows. He's got a lot of cool little craft distilleries and things on there. So be sure to check that out. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us on with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their exclusive Behind the Beam tour and monthly Claremont Supper Club events, which will feature a top secret release at the September event. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family.